Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will be painting an illustration that is inspired by my nephew and his love for dinosaurs. I decided to do this piece traditionally rather than digitally because the thought of painting so many shades of green sounded like a fun challenge to me that I was more than willing to accept. I show just about my whole process in this video, going from sketch to color comp to the finished piece. And if you want a more in-depth video on my process with me explaining what I'm doing and why, please let me know down in the comments. But I wanted to use this video to talk about the process in a less direct way, as I myself am learning to love each and every step. As I've gotten older and more experienced, I have realized just how important the early stages of making a new piece really are. If you would have asked me years ago to see my color comps or thumbnail sketches, I would have laughed because those didn't really exist. I basically would start pieces on that nice paper and finish them, sometimes ending up unhappy with them because the colors were off or the initial sketch wasn't right, so it would kind of throw off the whole piece. But if I had just worked a little harder on those beginning steps, this most likely would not have been the problem. Art school was where I really did learn quite a bit more about my process and the importance of it. You really had to show up to class with your thumbnail sketches so they could be discussed, and then you'd spend hours working on color comps once a sketch was finally nailed down. Sometimes I definitely found it tedious, but I am so glad that those habits were instilled in me early on, because I don't think I'd be as far along as I am now without them. I find myself every now and again starting a piece without much forethought, and it usually ends up being a not so great piece. Now, of course, not every single work of art that you make has to be a masterpiece, but it is nice to have a majority of them come out exactly how you envisioned, with very few surprises. Something I found to be helpful is really allowing myself to make those not so great sketches that will never see the light of day, simply to get as many ideas out of my head and onto paper. With this piece, for example, I drew some rather questionable sketches, but one of them looked vaguely like the piece you see here. And I took that idea and ran with it, further evolving it into something more concrete with the fluffy greenery and the bright little creatures hidden among the background. It can be incredibly tempting to just jump right into a painting with only an idea in your head, and I know that I am definitely guilty of this every now and again. But I can vouch that it is so much more satisfying to put in the effort and assure yourself that your idea in your head is exactly what will come out on paper. I really have come to love the early progression of a piece. Sometimes I'll make a sketch that I don't want to use for the intended piece, but I could easily tweak it and turn it into a completely different work of art down the road. Also, finding inspiration is always a fun time. I like to make my initial sketches first to get my ideas out, then search for reference images when I have a more complete idea of what I want. That way I'm not swayed by a certain image or style I'm seeing while I research. Someone I greatly admire for their process is Furry Little Peach, especially when she makes her Peachtober illustrations every year. That's really when you see a lot of her process and what goes into making art. Really, there are so many artists that work in their own methodical way, and I really could go on and on about them, but I should probably save that for another video. As I was saying before my little tangent, sketching is such an important part of the process because it really does lay the whole foundation of your piece, quite literally. Now, this doesn't only apply when working traditionally, but digitally as well. I actually prefer to do all of my sketches traditionally because I find I'm able to work a bit looser and feel more connected using paper and pencil rather than stylus and tablet, but that's just me. So in this moment right here, I realized that this value was way too close to the bush behind it, and I had to blot it off and start again. Even though I had these color comps that basically told me what colors I'd be using, I still had to adjust the color I was painting with to better match what was directly in front of me rather than what was created on a screen. I like making my color comps digitally just so I can quickly put down base colors for everything and see how well colors do or don't work together. But I did realize later on that my digital color comp skewed a bit more cool tone than what I was actually painting, and I did want my finished piece to be a bit more warm. So I mean, it ended up working out. It was just I had this little blip where I did have to adjust my colors a bit. So really I'm saying that it's all about pivoting and being adaptable to different situations. It's all just part of the process. I have found that I work a bit faster digitally than traditional just because I have to physically mix the paint or, layer the colored pencil rather than having it all pre-mixed and at my disposal as you would working in a program like Photoshop, for example. Despite these minor differences in painting time, I do spend about the same amount of my efforts doing the initial sketches, the refined sketch, the color comps, regardless of the medium. Although I like being more efficient, I am also not trying to race to finish the piece. I don't want to limit myself by sticking to the color comp 100%, only if part of what I originally wanted just isn't working. In that situation, I would go back to my color comp and tweak it and find something that does work a lot better. With this piece, for example, I thought I was happy with the color of my dinosaur in the color comp, and then as you can see here, when I went to paint it, I realized that color did not match what I was going for as much as I had originally thought. So it's okay to pivot. So, I have to remind myself that it's okay to pivot and try something different in the moment as long as, I trust myself enough to know that I'm making the right decision. And also just remember that it's paint, it's just paint, and you can always just paint right over it. So if I didn't like this color, I could always just mix a new one. It's been nice to see myself evolve into a better artist now that I do take a lot more pride in my process. I'd say I enjoy the sketching phase the most because, like I said earlier, it lays the whole foundation of your piece. Also, knowing you have a solid sketch is gratifying because you know that the rest of the process will be a lot simpler in comparison, and altering things like a certain color is a much easier fix compared to changing the placement of an object or altering the pose of a character. I just really love all the planning that goes into each piece and seeing those efforts really pay off. Finding a routine that works for me has also helped to make my process a whole lot more enjoyable. Now, it has definitely taken time, and I wouldn't say I'm 100% set in my ways, but for now, I'm doing what works for me, and I'm just loving the end results. And now, without further ado, here is my finished painting. This was made using a mix of acrylic gouache, Prismacolor colored pencils, and Posca paint pens. I actually forgot to record when I added more of the colored pencil details, so that's my bad. But I do love all the texture and depth that I was able to convey with this piece, but most importantly, the pure joy on my nephew's face. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!